I have heard a lot of dis and misinformation. Let's try and clear it up. Two shores, one truth, understanding reparations without division. The recent presence of leaders from countries like Ghana in the United States has sparked important conversations about reparations, history, and justice. However, it has also led to confusion, particularly the idea that African nations are somehow competing with African Americans for reparations. This misunderstanding has created unnecessary tension between two groups whose histories are deeply connected. In reality, while both are seeking justice for the same historical system, they are asking for different forms of repair from different entities. Ghana's push for reparations is rooted in its history as a central location during the transatlantic slave trade. European powers, including United Kingdom, Portugal, Netherlands, and France, established forts along the West African coast, such as Cape Coast Castle, where enslaved Africans were imprisoned and shipped across the Atlantic. These nations controlled the global system that turned human beings into commodities and extracted both people and resources from the African continent. As a result, Ghana and other African nations are making their case on an international level. They are asking former colonial powers to acknowledge their role and contribute to repairing the long-term damage caused by slavery and colonization. This repair is not primarily about direct payments to individuals. Instead, it includes demands such as infrastructure development, debt relief, the return of stolen cultural artifacts, and long-term economic investment. Ghana's argument is that the loss of millions of people and the disruption of its societies significantly delayed its development, and that the nations who benefited from this system should help rebuild what was lost. In contrast, the reparations movement in the United States is focused on a different, though related, issue. African Americans are not speaking as a separate nation, but as citizens of the United States. Their ancestors were enslaved within the country, and the wealth generated from that labor remained within its borders. Yet, after slavery ended, Black Americans were systematically excluded from that wealth through segregation, discriminatory housing policies, and unequal access to education and economic opportunities. Because of this, African Americans are seeking reparations from the U.S. government itself. Their demands are centered on closing the racial wealth gap and addressing systemic inequalities that persist today. These may include direct financial compensation, expanded access to homeownership, educational support, healthcare equity, and strengthened voting rights protections. Unlike Ghana's international claim, this is a domestic issue, one that focuses on repairing harm within a single nation. The confusion arises when people assume that reparations are coming from a single global source that must be divided among all descendants of slavery. This has led to the false belief that Ghana is attempting to take reparations that would otherwise go to African Americans. In reality, Ghana is not asking African Americans, or the U.S. government on their behalf, to give up anything. Ghana is directing its demands toward European nations that directly controlled and profited from the slave trade and colonial rule. The truth is that both movements, African nations seeking reparations and African Americans demanding justice, are rooted in the same historical process: the forced extraction of African people and the wealth generated from their labor. That wealth helped build powerful economies in Europe and the Americas, while leaving lasting economic and social challenges in both Africa and Black communities in the United States. While the forms of reparations being requested are different, they are not in conflict. Ghana is seeking national repair from former colonial powers, while African Americans are seeking justice from their own government. These are parallel efforts, not competing ones. In the end, reparations are not about division. They are about acknowledgement and correction. Rather than allowing misinformation to create conflict, recognizing the distinct but connected nature of these demands can strengthen the broader pursuit of justice for all those impacted by the legacy of slavery.